to an obligation, ignore others, pose for a picture. Over Christmas break, Win and I took the train to Albany to visit Gable Arsley in the rehab center. I had told Win that I was fine to go by myself, as it might be strange for my new secret boyfriend to accompany me on a visit to my badly injured ex-boyfriend. Win argued that he knew the area better than me, and I relented. Whatever. It was a long train ride, and the Hudson River, murky and shallow, didn't make for much of a scenic view anyway. Christmas Eve, Gable had sent me a message asking me to come. I suppose Christmas had put him in a contemplative mood, or maybe he was lonely. He had written that he had had a lot of time to think since he'd been ill, and he knew he'd behaved badly toward me. His doctors thought he might be ready to return to school soon, and he'd like to know that everything was all right between us before that happened. I had visited Sweet Lake Rehabilitation before because Leo had been briefly sent there after he'd been injured. It's a nice place, as much as any of these types can be considered nice places. I've visited my share of hospitals and rehabilitation centers, and the main thing that terrifies me about them isn't anything you see there, but the scent. The chemical cleanser smell, sweet and awful, covering up illness and weakness and death. Ironically, there was no lake by Sweet Lake, just a big cavern of dirt, where a lake or a pond must have been. Do you want me to come with you? Wynn asked when we got to the lobby. We were far enough away from home that we felt we could hold hands, but now I didn't want to in case Gable's parents, or siblings, or friends were nearby. I shook my head. No, I said. I'll be fine. I think I should go with you. Isn't he the same boy who tried to force himself on you? I shrugged. Honestly, Wynn, I don't know who he is anymore, but my gut tells me that you in the room will only make him, I'll search for the right word, irritated. Besides, I'm tough. I've been taking care of myself for years. I know you're tough. That's one of the things I like best about you. I just want to make life easier for you sometimes. You do, I said, and then I kissed him quickly on his nose. I meant to leave it at that, but then I kissed him again. I'm out. Wynn nodded. All right, tough girl. I'll be waiting out here for you. If you're gone for more than a half hour, I'm coming in after you. I gave my name to the receptionist at the desk, and she gave me Gable's room number, 67, and pointed me down a corridor. I knocked on the door. Who is it? I heard Gable say. It's Anya, I said. Come in. His voice sounded odd in a way that I could not quite pinpoint. I opened the door. Gable was seated in a wheelchair that faced the window. He rolled around, and I saw his face. The texture was pocked in some places and still raw in others. And a strange patch of skin was sewn from his left cheek to the corner of his mouth. It was a skin graft that might slightly impeding his speech. There were bandages around some of his fingertips, and his body looked extremely thin and weak. I wondered why he was in a wheelchair, and so my eyes drifted down to his thighs, then to his knees, then to the foot. Yes, foot. There's only one of them. The right one had been amputated. Gable watched me look at him. His gray-blue eyes were still the same. Find me repulsive? Gable asked. No, I said honestly. Their circumstance in my life had allowed me the luxury of being squeamish around injury. Gable laughed, a tiny flat sound. Liar! I reminded Gable that I had seen worse things in my life. Yes, of course you have, Gable said. The truth is, I repulse myself, Annie. What do you say to that? I can understand why you would feel that way. You've always cared so much about appearances. Like that day at school. I know you hated having the spaghetti sauce in your shirt more than anything else. I paused to look at Gable and how he nodded and, oddly, even smiled a little at the remembrance. But how you are now, no one can deny that you are much changed, but I suspect it isn't as bad as you think. Gable's laugh came out as a wretched bleat. Everyone says I shouldn't say such things, but not you. This is why I love you, Annie. I did not feel the need to reply. He was still a liar. For a long time, I wish I had died, Gable said. But not anymore. That's good, I replied. Come closer, Gable insisted. Come sit on the bed. Through our exchange, I had been standing by the door. Even though Gable was confined to a wheelchair, I was still wary of him. Bad things happened when the two of us were alone. I won't bite, he said, kind of like a dare. All right. As there were no available chairs, I walked to the bed and sat down.
Oh, man!
You know why I lost my foot? Sepsis. I've never heard of it. It's when the body starts shutting down and attacking itself. I also lost 3 fingertips. He waved his damaged hand toward me. They say I'm lucky. I'll walk again and even dance. Don't I look like a lucky, lucky boy? Yes, you do. I thought of Leo and my mother and my father. You look like someone who survived something awful. I don't want to look that way, Gable said. I detest survivors. He spat out the word survivors. My father used to say the only thing a person needed to be in life was a survivor. Oh, spare me the pearls of wisdom from the criminal. Do you think I have any desire to hear anything your father had to say? Gable asked. The whole time I was with you was daddy this and daddy that. Your father's been dead a million years. Grow up, Anya. I'm leaving, I said. No, wait, don't go, Andy. I'm unfit for company, and I'm sorry. Gable's voice is whiny and babyish. I suppose I pitied him. The thing is, you're still handsome, I said, and he was. His skin would heal. He'd learn to walk again, and then he'd be the same old, awful Gable. Hopefully a tiny bit kinder and more empathetic than the previous version. Think so? Yes, I assured him. You're a damn liar, Gable roared. He rolled himself toward the window. I've thought of you every day, Annie, Gable said in a quiet voice. I waited every day for you to come on your own. But you never did. I thought you would have, considering you had some role in my fate. But you never did. I'm sorry, Gable, I said. We weren't exactly on the best of terms when it happened. But I did mean to come. I don't know if you heard, but I was sent to Liberty. And then I was ill myself for a while. Then I just lost track of time, I suppose. I should have come. Should have, would have, could have, didn't. I really am sorry. Gable said nothing. He was still facing the window. After several seconds, I heard him sniffle. I walked over to him. There were tears running down his ruined face. I treated you so badly, Gable whimpered. I said terrible things about you. I tried to make you. It's forgotten, I lied. I never forget what Gable had almost done, but he had been punished enough. And you loved me, the way you used to look at me. No one will ever look at me like that again. But I hadn't loved him. But it seemed cruel and beside the point to mention that now. And you were my only real friend. None of those other people meant anything to me. Ashamed, he said. Can you ever forgive me, Annie? He was truly pathetic. I decided that I could indeed forgive him. I told him so. I'll need friends when I'm back at Trinity. Can we be friends? Yeah, of course. He reached out with his good hand for me to shake, and then I took it. I shook it. He pulled me toward him, and the move was so unexpected that I stumbled into him. That was when he kissed me on the mouth. Gable, no! I stood and pushed his wheelchair away from me. hard enough the back handles banged against the window. What? He asked. I thought we were going to be friends again. I don't kiss my friends on the mouth, I said. But you leaned into me, he sputtered. Are you mad? I tripped. I turned to walk away and, with surprising speed and force, Gable aimed his wheelchair at me. I was knocked over into his hospital. At that moment, Wynn ran into the room and I pushed Gable's chair away from me. Get off her! Wynn yelled. Wynn raised a fist toward Gable's face. Don't! You'll hurt him, I said to Wynn. Wynn lowered his arm. Who the hell is this? Gable asked. My friend, I replied. The kind of friend you kiss in the mouth, I'm betting, Gable replied. Yes, now this makes sense. What's your friend's name? You look familiar. Wynn and I exchanged looks. My name is Wynn, but you can think of me as Annie's friend who doesn't like men that force themselves on women. Then we laughed. I didn't speak to Wynn until we were on the train home. Shouldn't have burst in like that, I said. Wynn shrugged. I had it under control, I assured him. I know you did, lass. You're the toughest girl I know. Lass? Where did that come from? I don't know. I just felt the urge to call you that. Does it bother you? I thought about his question. It's kind of girly, but no, I guess not. I put my hand on the crook of his arm. Were you waiting out there the whole time? Yes, I suppose I was. Gable will figure out who you are, and once he does, everyone will know about us, I said. Maybe it won't be so bad. I wouldn't care if people did know. Besides, Gable could decide to keep the information to himself. Why would he do that? Well, to blackmail us or something. Maybe. But I knew that blackmail was in Gable Arsley's style. Blackmail required planning and patience. Gable was all impulse. When he got off the train in New York City, the paparazzi were waiting. Hey, kids, look over here. Smile. I guess Gable figured it out, Wynn whispered to me. Anya, is that your boyfriend? He's my friend from school, I yelled at. We're lab partners. Yeah, right. The pictures were everywhere by the next morning. And they got one of us kissing as we left the train. The headlines were all something like Star-Crossed Lovers, Rafta Princess and a Assistant PA's son find live in the city. Then called me in the afternoon. You calling to break up? No, he replied, a bit amused. My dad wants you to come to dinner tonight. Was he angry? He never asked me not to date you. He asked you. Remember? So you mean he's mad at me? I think I'd rather not come. Thanks. Are you scared? That's not like you. I asked him what time I should be there. 7, Wynn replied. I'd come to get you if you didn't mind another photo session, he joked. Why do you sound so damn happy? I suppose I'm sort of glad people know you're my girlfriend. What should I wear? I said gruffly. I'm partial to that red dress of yours, he said. I put on my trusty red dress and took a bus to Wynn's house. It was a much nicer apartment than the salary of an assistant DA, or the DA for that matter, could afford. Either Wynn's mother had made a killing for me, possible, or there was family money. Charles Delacroix opened the door before I even had a chance to ring the bell. He'd been waiting for me. He seemed significantly smaller inside the apartment than he had that day at Liberty and on the boat. It was as if he had the ability to expand or contract as the situation required. You're looking well, Anya. Much better than the last time we met. Yeah, I'm feeling better, I said. Wynn is with my wife, procuring some essential missing ingredients for dinner. Why don't you come into my study? We'll talk and wait. I followed him into the study, which had red walls, rugs, and mahogany shelves with paper books. You collect books? Charles Delacroix shook his head. My wife's father did. That startled me. Wynn's mother was the one with the money. On Mr. Delacroix's screen was one of the articles about Wynn and me. The truth is, I orchestrated this, Charles Delacroix admitted. I wanted us to meet alone, so I'll cut right to the chase here. Wynn tells me he's in love with you. Is that right? I nodded. And you're in love with him? Or are you too practical for such indiscretions? We haven't known each other very long, I began. But I think I might be. Charles Delacroix rubbed his neck with his skinny, uncallous fingers. All right then. It is what it is, he sighed. He seemed as if he was going to continue speaking, but he said nothing. Instead, he poured himself from a crystal decanter. Is that it? I asked. How rude of me. Would you like a drink too? I shook my head. I mean, is that all you have to say about the matter? Listen, Anya, I advise you against dating Wynn, and it would probably make my job simpler if you'd gone in a different direction. But I'm not such an ogre. My son's in love. Charles Delacroix shrugged. We are where we are. I like you, Anya. And I'd be the worst sort of hypocrite if I held your parentage against you. We, none of us, can escape the circumstances of our births. Now, if you decide to marry Wynn, that might be another story. My advisors tell me that my theoretical campaign, and mind you, nothing's been decided about that, can handle Wynn dating you, but marrying you, they aren't so sure. Now, I promise you, Mr. Delacroix, I'm not planning to marry anyone anytime soon. Good! Charles Delacroix laughed, then his face grew solemn. Did Wynn ever tell you about his older sister, Alexa? She died when she was about your age now. I like to speak of it. I nodded. I could understand not wanting to speak of things. My point is, despite what I said to you that day on the ferry, I want my only living child to be happy, Anya. But I also want him to be safe. The one thing I ask is that you ever think my boy's in danger because of any of your familial associations, please come to me. Do we understand each other? Yes, I said. Good. And of course, if you ever commit any legal indiscretions, I'll have to prosecute you to the fullest extent of my office. I can't be seen to show you favoritism. This was said in as friendly manner as possible to say such things, so I told him I understood. When his mother arrived home then, Charlie, a woman's voice called out. We're in the study, Mr. Delacroix called back. When his mother entered the room, she had long ink black hair and light green eyes, and was about my mother's height and build. Jane, you must be Anya. My, you're very pretty. You? And then I had to stop myself because I felt as if I might cry. You remind me of someone I used to know. Oh well, thanks I guess. I suppose I should ask you if it was someone you liked or someone you didn't like, she laughed. Someone I liked. Someone I missed very much. I knew it was an awkward thing to say, but I didn't want to tell her that she reminded me of my mother. After dinner, Wynn walked her home. The paparazzi had left for the night, or maybe they'd simply gotten bored of the story. Wynn wanted to know if his father had been awful to me. I told him he hadn't been. He mainly wanted to make sure that I wouldn't get you killed. What did you say? Wynn asked. I told him I'd try not to. I couldn't make any guarantees. Then we were back in my room. Oh, no! We didn't have sex, or even get particularly close, but I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed my mind. I could feel myself open up toward him like a rose in a hothouse. I couldn't, Bill. I thought of my parents in heaven or hell, and I thought about God. Daddy once said, if you don't know what you believe, Annie, you lost your soul. I realized something very important that night. It had been easy to resist losing my virginity to Gable, because I never really wanted him. In other words, there had never been much temptation. It was far more challenging to stick my principles where Wynne was concerned. That night, Wynne asked me about sex, like what my beliefs were, etc. And I told him that I didn't want to have sex until I was married. Without missing a beat, he nodded. So let's get married. I hit him. You're that desperate to have sex? No, he said. I've had sex. I'm 16. Hey, we barely know each other. He held my chin in his hand and looked in my eyes. I know you, Anya. He might have been serious, but I made a joke of it. You'd probably marry me just to annoy your father. He grinned. Well, that would certainly be a bonus. Why don't you like him? I asked. He seems all right. In 5-minute doses, Wynne muttered. I imagine you've noticed that he's pretty ambitious. Sure. My father was too. In the opposite way, though. I still loved him. Wynne began and then he stopped. I admire Dad. He came from nothing. He was raised in an orphanage. Both his parents were killed in a car accident, but he lived. He thinks I'm soft. Who could compete with that? He looked at me. Oh, right. You can, can't you? My poor, brave girl. He kissed me on the forehead. I told him that I didn't want to talk about me. Why does he think you're soft? Because I got in some trouble long ago. Boring kid stuff. I tell you, but it's embarrassing. Now you have to tell me. No, I'm ashamed, lass. And it's not very interesting anyway. It was after my sister died, and it's the lowest I've ever been. The point is, my dad thought it was weakness, and my mother indulged my weakness. Your parents get along? Dad says the only person who'd ever loved him is my mother. She seems nice, I said. She is. But Dad? He cheats on her. She ignores it, but I can't. I mean, how can I respect a man like that? Then he asked me if my father had ever cheated on my mother. Despite my father's many failings, it was impossible to imagine him ever behaving in such a way. I told him that I didn't know for sure, that I'd been too young to know, but I doubted it. He believed in marriage, I said. So does my dad, but that doesn't stop him from acting like the way he does. Wynne said. I would never treat you that way, Annie. I knew that without him having to say it. Wynne was perfect in that way. I could go on and on about Wynne, but personally, I'm sickened by that sort of thing. Daddy always said that if a person had about a good fortune, that person would do best to keep it to herself. Wynne felt like the best stroke of luck I'd had for a very long time. Insert finger and throw if you like. But yes, I was happy for a time. I was the kind of girl I usually hate. And I realized that the only reason I ever hated those girls in the first place is because I envied them. Cliché? Yes, undoubtedly. But also happened to be true. Aside. Still, you may find yourself asking, what of Leo's job? What of the contaminated chocolate supply? What of that tattoo on Anya's ankle? What of Nana's health and Natty's nightmares? Just because Annie has a delicious new boyfriend, she can't possibly think that's a good excuse to go around ignoring everything and everyone else in the world. Truth is, there were most definitely things that fell through the subway gates, but at the time, I was paying attention. Even when I considered all that was to happen in the months that followed, I would not take those dumb and happy, sweet and foggy, endless, remembered days. Correction. Once I thought about the tattoo on my ankle. We were in my bedroom, and Wynne's lips were on it. He said it was kind of cute. then sang me a song about a tattoo lady.